I'd like to introduce Haran Wolfovitz Yaffe. Give a round of applause. Chaim.
Chaim. I never know how to really start these things. Sometimes I write a speech in advance, sometimes I write a lecture in advance, but I never write the opening. I have a tendency of arriving to a place and I like to look at the people and to see what do they want me to talk about. Some places I go and all they want me to do is talk about the blood and the guts and all that. And usually that would be the 10 to 15-year-olds when I do schools. Some would like me to only talk about politics. That would be usually the grown-ups. Usually that would be outside of Israel. There's always that false notion that because I went into war and I got injured, I know what would be the solution for what goes on in the Middle East. Let me flat out say it to you, I have no clue. I have really no clue. Don't even bother asking me what would be my opinions on the Palestinian territories or Bibi Netanyahu or what should we do with the Iranian threat. I have no clue. Ask me what song I think would rule the charts. I have an opinion on that. Music is something that I usually talk about when I go to art schools. I have a tendency of going to art school, but at an earlier age, trying to convince the kids, don't let go of your dream. So that'll be a lecture of talking just about their dreams. When I talk to veterans, or when I talk in the hospitals, I will usually open talking about the medical situation and what was the medical crisis. I would use many different medical expressions such as damage control surgery or I don't know, ulnar or median or all that kind of words. It means nothing to me, it means nothing to you, but it means so much to them. But this one is the first time that I'm doing a Chabad. I've never done a Chabad before, I have no clue, I had no idea what to expect. I got an email one day, I was in the Dominican Republic, walking barefoot, shirtless on the beach, having fun. I got an email from Rabbi Overlander telling me that his secretary, aka his daughter, told him to contact me, something like that, and he's telling me, okay, when can you come to England? I told him, yes, it's on my way, I'm already going to be around the area. And we had a green light to go and do it. But then I said to myself, but what am I going to talk to Chabad? I've never done Chabad before. I've done many synagogues before. But Chabad, I've never done Chabad before. What is Chabad? I was always lost. Not always, since you contacted me. And I tried to reach and I did some research. And to be honest, I came to the conclusion that it's not even relevant. There's a greater picture to all of it, because we're all Jews. And we all come from the same parents, and so I decided I'm going to put that aside. And I'm going to start with around 500 years ago. My family not decides, the Spaniards decided for them, and they leave Spain and they go to Israel. And since then, my love affair with the state of Israel began. Around 500 years ago, Familia de Angeli, Familia de Pipano, they go to Israel and they built a house in Israel. Around 500 years later, I came to life. About 20 years before that, my mom and my dad, my mom was born in Sweden. She's from a Polish descent though. Both of her parents are the sole survivors from the Holocaust, yet they ended up in Sweden after the war. So my mother is Swedish. They meet the new generation and the very old generation, the true Tzabar, and they build a house in Israel. Together they build a settlement in the Golan, they build a settlement in Mount Sinai, and they end up in a small, tiny village in the Galil, 120 families. It's a very hippish place. They're all vegetarian, vegans. They're wearing gowns and whatnot. Everybody has long hair, they're barefoot, and I used to walk with flowers in my hair, literally with flowers in my hair, with a white gown. Of course, barefoot. I used to carry my guitar and walk on the mountains. I think I felt almost every stone in the Galilee mountains with my own foot. Not with the soles of my shoes, with my own barefoot. At a very young age, I fell in love with music. Music is something that runs in the family, yet no one plays. My mom is still, likes to call herself a rock and roll chick. She still listens to very loud music all the time. So does my dad. He listens to psychedelic rock from the early 70s. UK and American as well. And always, I remember as a kid, they used to sit me on the floor in front of the stereo with really big speakers, and I remember my dad just waving towards the music really loud and remembers every single line. When I was 10, they sent me to piano lessons. I don't want to play piano. I want to play football with the rest of the kids. Hated it. But there was always some connection between me and music. I knew all the songs, and I knew all the words of everything. But as a fan, as something that I like, what is this? Like I was amazed. When I was 15, my mom bought me a CD, and she told me, "I think you're gonna like that." I listened to the CD on the first time. The CD is called Beautiful Freak. And I listened to that CD and I said, I'm gonna become a rock star. And I picked up an old guitar that I had in my house and I taught myself how to play guitar. I was the worst. I couldn't play anything. I annoyed anyone around me. Really, literally, I annoyed everyone around me. Check this out! And shut up. But that got me into music school. And I went into music school and I graduated music school. Teachers in the other classes used to kick me out, except from biology. I don't know why. I was fascinated with biology as well. The teacher let me stay. But the rest of the classes, they always kicked me out. And when they kicked me out, I went to the conservatorium. And I sat on the piano. I had no idea how to play the piano. But I taught myself again how to play the piano. Upon the age of 18, I joined the army like the rest of my boys. And of course, I went and became a combat soldier. I remember at school they offered me to go to the IDF band. And I looked at it, are you kidding me? But I went and I served in the combat engineering corps for 3 years. 3 years, I joined around when the second intifada began, and I finished my service at the beginning of 2004. Lost on the way many friends, 8 in 1 year from my close buddies that we grew up with. It was very interesting times, very challenging, not from a physical point of view, but from an emotional point of view, because they're my mates, and suddenly they're gone. and you go to the first funeral and you're kind of shocked because growing up as an Israeli, you always hear about casualties, because this is what we brought up upon in Israel. There's always the memorial, the Yom HaZikaron. We always know, we heard they always come, the heroes, they come to the school, and we always hear about that because it's always on the news, especially when in my generation, when we grew up. But when it hit you, when you lose someone, it kind of strikes a chord. And what happened here? I thought it's just like stories. And there's another one, and another one, and another one, and another one. And my guys, we were very sarcastic, we have a very dark sense of humor, and after every funeral they all say, Haran, you're next, okay? And I say, yeah, okay, I'll take it. Next one's mine. And then we meet it again at a funeral. And they say, Haran, what are you doing? That was your turn. Sorry, next one is mine. And again, and again, and again. 8 guys in 1 year. At some point, you become desensitized by it. It didn't affect us anymore. And that was the time when we started questioning ourselves, thinking like, what? Something went wrong with us. And we all tried to re-grasp ourselves. It's a very interesting phenomenon in Israel, because a lot of the boys, you hear about them, they finish their service and then they travel the world. We did the same thing. What I forgot to mention is that 3 years of service, I served all the borders, went into battle, always had a musical instrument with me. I had my guitar for 3 years, and if I was in a post somewhere, I either had a harp, or not a harp, a harmonica, or a flute. And I taught myself so many different instruments just to pass time, because being a security guard, sitting in a post for 4 hours, it is boring. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. It is very, combat is very fun, it's action. You get to explode stuff, but it's boring. So I finished my service. I said, okay, I gotta get out of here. I can't see another mother cry. And I went off to Los Angeles. I gotta become a rock star. I had $500 and an acoustic guitar. Less than a month afterwards, I had a coffee shop on the beach, and I started recording my first album. Less than a month. Don't ask me how. Really, I have no idea how it happened. I was 22 years old. I had a coffee shop, and I was playing every Tuesday in a place called Café des Artistes. Pure luck, pure chances. Apparently the Americans don't like when the Israelis come over, and they canceled my visa. I went back to Israel, decided that I'm not going to do music again. I touched my dream, and it was too painful to get back to Israel. I remember the first 3 weeks when I was in Israel, I woke up to the piano and a bottle of scotch. That's how I spent 3 weeks. Then I said, okay, Haran, you gotta wake up. I put my guitar back in its case, everything. I locked it up, and I went back to live my life as an Israeli. And like the rest of the guys, I opened a startup. I had a startup company focused in creating a gateway for emerging talents, for actors, for singers, for dancers, for models. If you had a talent, we developed a system, an online software to get you into the production companies, into the theater, TV, radio, and everything. And we did really well. We started 3 people, and by the end of the year, we were 170 employees. In 2 years, we took over 50% of the Israeli market. And I was living the dream. I was surrounded by very talented people. I was working all the time on TV and theater. I wasn't doing music, but I was surrounded by art all the time, and I was doing something, I was helping others. At some point I said, but I'm missing the point. So we bought a studio, the company. And now I had a studio that I can play with. So I started playing with some songs, having some fun. And then the war started. During the war I was in Tel Aviv, living the showbiz life. Just got back from London a few days before that. And when the war started, I wasn't even on the recruited list. Nobody called me. But I said, there's no way I can just stay and do nothing. My partners and I, we looked at the mailing list that we had, and we looked at the people that we know. We said, we got to do something. So we started sending talents, such as actors, comedians, singers, to the shelters, to the kids in the shelters, to the soldiers up front. And that's what we did in the first time. So I was just, the first weeks of the war, I was just coordinating actors and singers to go to the shelters. But it felt like I wasn't doing enough. But again, no one called me. So I called up my officer and I said, like, how come nobody's calling me? And he tells me, consider that your luck. You're not supposed to be there. Are you sure? Yeah, just, you don't need to come. Like I told you, I grew up north, not far from the Lebanese border. And one day the Hezbollah made a mistake and they fired a rocket and it hit my neighbor's house. And nobody messes with my mom. I called my officer again, told him, where are you at? And he says, Yaffe, don't even think about it. It took me 2 hours and I was already up north. So it was the middle of the night and I was looking for my platoon somewhere up in the mountains in the Galilee. And I found him and he sees me in the middle of the night and he goes, Yaffe, what are you doing here? I said, what do you mean? You think you're going to war without me? That's my team. In a few days of training, and we assembled our team again. We were 8 in my crew. We were the first vehicle to enter in our mission. Me, Yossi, and Miki, we served together since our first day in the army, and now we are back in duty. So we were 3. The other 3 were Uri, Dubi, and Naftali, which they served together in the army, but 10 years before we drafted. They were reservists. They were 10 years older than us. And we had Tuval and Mordi. Mordi, we just picked him up before we entered Lebanon, and Tuval is one of the most amazing guys I've ever met. But that team it took us a few days to assemble that team. We kicked people out of our team, making sure that we have what it takes. If you had a kid, you're not on the team. If you're that, you're not on the team. We just wanted to make sure that we're okay. On August 9th, our mission was to enter Lebanon and conquer Marjayoun. And Marjayoun is about 10K from Metula. On the other side of Marjayoun, there's a village, it's a wasp nest called El Khiyam. This is the most dangerous village for the Hezbollah. Tzal never entered El Khiyam during the Lebanon war. If you go in there, you're going to get slaughtered. But our mission was to conquer Marjayoun, from there to bombard El Khiyam, and the next day the troops will go into El Khiyam while we take them from the other side. Like I told you, my vehicle was the first one to enter in the mission. It was us, a tank, and a D9. D9 is a huge tractor. And we go in and everything goes smoothly. It's exactly like you see in the movies, exactly like in the action, in the war games that the kids play. Same thing, explosion there, explosion there, bang, 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 bang. We took over the village. Simple as that. Of course there's drama, and of course there's this, but nothing too serious. We took over the village, it was around 2 a.m. We took over the village. On the other side of the valley there's El Khiyam, and we know that if you stay in the valley during daylight, it's a dead zone. You're gonna die. We get a call telling us that there's 2 tanks stuck in the middle of the valley. One lost his engine and one flipped on the side. The reason they called us is because my team has the ability of going in and out really, really fast. That's our specialty. So we get a mission to go down to recover those tanks, head back to the Israeli border, and quickly get our position back in Marjayun in order to start the battle the next day. We head down from the village, we start rescuing those tanks, and we started heading toward the Israeli border. Unfortunately, it took us longer than we anticipated. It was around 8:20 in the morning, broad daylight, and we were way, way far from the Israeli border. There was 5 vehicles in the convoy, and I was the last vehicle. For a reason that nobody knows, suddenly the convoy stopped. It was a matter of seconds. I see the 2 tanks ahead of me are getting hit by 2-3 missiles each. It's a huge explosion, very loud. And suddenly we see a missile heading towards our way. We don't think twice. We tell everybody to jump out of the vehicle. But they call it tilim tilim. All my crew is able to jump out of the vehicle. Me and Dubi, my commanding officer, we were not that lucky. I couldn't open my shaft. I'm struggling, I'm fighting, open my shaft, and nothing. And then all hell broke loose. So big boom, big blast. The metal was shrieking. I remember the explosion, I remember the smoke. I remember the last thing I saw with my eyes was that I was laying on top of Dubi. And I'm seeing that Dubi's leg is hanging by a thread. And there's blood everywhere, and Dubi is yelling, my leg, my leg, my leg. And it annoyed me. Why is he yelling? Why is he getting into panic? It's just going to distract everyone. It really bothered me. I don't know why, and I kept calm, acted cool. I'm good, nothing happened to me, I'm good. What a fool. Due to the hit, my face was burnt, I couldn't see anything anymore. Uri and Miki jumped into the vehicle to recover me and Dubi under a rain of missiles and artillery. Uri got for that the 2nd highest Medal of Honor in the Israeli army. And Miki lost himself in the oblivion with his post-traumatic stress. I visit him almost every night. They recover us from the vehicle, they put us in a ditch. Dubi's yelling, everybody's yelling. I remember them saying, Yaffe, stay with us, Yaffe, stay with us. And I'm saying, relax, I'm okay, I'm alive, tranquilo, I'm good. Because in my head, all I was thinking is that I hurt my leg. And I remember lying in a ditch and I'm singing to myself. And there was one thought really kept me calm. A month before the war, I promised my girl that I would never leave her. And I remember lying there in the ditch and I'm thinking, I can't die. I just made a promise to my girlfriend that I would never leave her. I can't break a promise. I'm good. And I started singing. And Yossi, Yaffe, you're crazy. Yaffe, stay with us. You're crazy. Yaffe, we're losing you. And I'm good. Tranquilo. Nothing bothered me. I was certain that only my leg hurts. Apparently I was on and off all the time. And the rescue team came and they put all the wounded soldiers in the tanks. They started going towards the Israeli border. Really fast they noticed that someone is missing. Apparently they forgot me in the battlefield, so they went back and they picked me up. At that point I was declared as dead. They threw me on top of a tank with the rest of the gear, and they threw me into the before they put me they threw me on top of the tank, and we went to the Israeli border. The tank, I remember the tank hit a ditch and we were going so fast, so I jumped and I fell. I fell from the one side of the tank to the other. From the tzariach la tuba. Tuba is the body. Tzariach is where the cannon is. And I fell down. I remember they picked me up again, and they're all yelling. And they took me to the Israeli border. And I remember when they put me in an ambulance and everybody was yelling, and that was where I completely lost it. I woke up 10 days later. Now there's a very interesting phenomena in Israel with casualties. Currently, the soldiers who are wounded outside of the Israeli border hang on till they cross the Israeli border, then they let go and they return their soul. It's a very, very interesting phenomena. Both of my friends lasted till the border, crossed the border, passed. V'shavu banim legvulam. Filed on to the Israeli border. I lost it, and then they took all the soldiers and they call it a chet. It's like half a circle. They put half a circle with those who were wounded, and one side there were the dead bodies, uncovered yet. The medical chopper arrives and lands. The doctor says that he walks out of the airplane, out of the chopper. He sees a guy taking out a black bag. He looks at me and he sees that I'm gasping for air. He says, I saw a man having his last breath. He ran over, he operated me there on the battlefield, on the field, threw me into a chopper and took me to Rambam. Him and the soldier says that during all the flight, he just yells, nobody dies in my plane, nobody dies in my plane, nobody dies in my plane. But when they admitted me to Rambam, he was sure that I was dead, because all he was getting in the blood pressure was his pumping blood into me. So Rambam receives me. At that time I'm considered a John Doe because no one could identify me. They had it mixed up with all the plates and all the names, and I was admitted as a John Doe. I was unrecognizable.